So we've seen how conditionals help make more interesting programs. It's high time we now learn about another type of construction, which is iterations. That's also a very interesting construction, very useful. So let's first try to relate it to the conditionals construction, the if-else construction. Maybe that's complicating things a little bit, but I think there's some value to it. So let's say we have a block A, and then we execute a test, let's call it T. And we have two options. Either this test succeeds, and in that case, we execute block B. Or this test fails, and in that case, we go all the way to executing code C. But the catch is that if the test succeeds, we go through B, and then maybe some other additional little segment of code. But then we go back here. Now, the way this is done is that, so you start at A, you go through the test. If the test passes, you go through B, and then you modify it a little bit more, and then you go back through the test again. So this test here, if it succeeded the first time, it's very likely to succeed again. So this B will execute many times over, basically, up until at some point, maybe some modifications here ensured that the test would fail. And at that moment, the test has failed, and we go out and execute C, and then exit basically the whole construction summarized here. So the result is that we've executed B many times over, and we have gone through A, B, C, and we've done this by executing B many times before going back to C. So this might be the better picture to think of, the easier picture to think of, but in practice, it's actually implemented in this way, with a test, an actual test T, and some counter here that will increment up until the test here fails. Okay, so this is, and depending on what is exactly written here, how things are written, you get different kind of loops. So you could get for loops, you could get while loops, and you could get other constructions. So let's see in Python how to do a for loop, actually. So the picture is still the same. So we have A, B, and C, and we want to go through B many times over, and maybe we want some parameter I to change as we go through B. So I'll just give you an example. So in Python, this would correspond to having A here, and then you do a for, and I'll skip what's in there at the moment, and then a colon, and then you put some indentation for the whole block B, and the indentation helps delimitate where the block is, because immediately after that, without any indentation, is block C. So the indentation is really what helps decide where the block starts and where it stops. And what do you have here? Well, you have something related to I. So I was the counter, what's called the counter. So let's say I is in some string. Yeah, it could be some string, or it could be some list, or it could be some range. Range is maybe the simplest. So range 5. So I goes between 0 and 4. That's a particularity of Python. But anyway, I runs through 5 values, and each time B is executed with the value of I changing. Okay, so you can, if you relate back to the previous picture, you can see that this corresponds to here incrementing I by 1 each time and testing whether I is strictly less than 5 or not. And when I reaches 5, then you go through this part and you exit basically the whole construction. Now, there is another possibility in Python, and that possibility is to add some code, some block of code here, so that when we exit the whole for construction, that block of code is executed. Okay, and that construction here would correspond to something slightly different here. So it would be else, and then we would put D, and here we would put C. Okay, so the construction here is really execute B 5 times, and after that D, and then C. Okay, so this was a simple way to construct a for loop in Python.